And those of you all at home, I know my friend Adam was watching earlier. He wanted to come, but due to some sickness and stuff, he couldn't.
That was one of your strength coaches, was it?
One of my friends over in Jacksonville, strength coach, who just started using Conjugate a few months ago and got a jump mat. I think he said like his gym average is up like 3 inches since September, something like that. So yeah, stuff works. I think he was saying like it feels, like almost like magic.
Yeah.
Because like pretty simple, then you start doing it, and it actually does. Like you get 3/4 right and crazy results. So yeah, for those of you all who know me, I'm sure it has something to do with Westside versus the world. That's why most people know me. Ever since making that movie, I learned a lot about strength, and obviously I trained myself and spent, the better part of the last 7 years studying Westside, getting the opportunity to talk to coaches from around the world, athletes from around the world, Louis, all the guys up in Columbus. Basically, I got to take this odyssey where everyone else, kind of watches on YouTube, I got to, if not just call them, sit down and talk with them, oftentimes on camera, and they let me record it, and I could just pick their brain for hours about anything, because I had the justification of I was making a movie about Louis. So thanks again to Louis, because otherwise I'd be doing something way different right now. But the most fascinating part of making the movie for me was that I got to talk to all of these coaches who were using the Conjugate system with different sports, different athletes, different teams. And as cool as it was to, bench 400 pounds or squat over 5 or something, it sounded so much cooler to hear what these people were doing with athletes. To hear like getting kids to run faster and jump higher. When I was younger, I played sports. I played football. That was my big thing. Offensive and defensive line, tight end. And I was a thrower through shot put and discus. Good enough to do any of those things at a low level on, some collegiate team, but ultimately I chose to try and do film instead. And film didn't let me do any sports. So a decade or so later, I end up back with Westside versus the world, and it sucks me back into this world that I kind of knew about before, and kind of, half my life has been about athletics, the other half has been about the arts, and this project kind of brought them back together and got me thinking about athletics again. Granted, an older, much slower, weaker version of myself, who was constantly injured for some reason, my feet. But so after making the movie, I got invited to go out and watch my old high school play a football game. They were playing their crosstown rival, and by crosstown, it's about 1.5 miles down the road. A school district that butts up against my alma maters almost the entire length of it in Tallahassee, where everyone plays football. We got a lot of great athletes, a lot of guys, go to big D1s, and, kids going to Alabama probably this year, kids from our city going to the NFL, if not yearly, every other year, every 2-3 years at least. So in a football town, my high school had been beaten by our crosstown rival now 24 times in a row. And this is last fall. I go to the game, and I go with some of the kids that I played with, and immediately I showed up and said, oh shit, here it goes again. Kickoff wasn't for almost an hour, and they asked, well, what? And I said, well, look at us. Our team looked like a middle school. Everyone was either, sort of looked round and out of shape, or tall and skinny. The other team, they didn't have, amazing height. They didn't have amazing length. Nothing was, spectacular about them in any way, shape, or form, except they were all noticeably just a little thicker. Every kid had an ass. Every kid had, some sort of arm. You could see some triceps a little bit from the sidelines. And, I don't think that they were doing anything special in the weight room. In fact, I know a little bit about what they're doing, and I would not be impressed at all. But there was a concerted effort to the weight room. And after they went up 42-0 at halftime, I decided to wait because I didn't want to deal with the traffic. So I stayed till the end of the game to be one of the last cars out. They were on a running clock at halftime, so that was nice. By the time the parking lot had kind of thinned out, the game was just ending. The joke there is that everyone left at halftime. But afterwards, I wrote an article or a little blog post on Facebook that Nate Harvey and a few other people were kind enough to sort of screenshot and repost. But I basically said, in this day and age, it's still amazing to me that, being 15, 16 years after I'd played high school football, coaches still hadn't figured out that you cannot control, at least in the public school level, you can't control whether or not you're going to get a great running back or a great quarterback, or you're going to have at least 5 kids with size and decent feet to protect them. You can't control what kind of kid walks through the door. All that you can control is that you've got, roughly 3 years or so in which you can decide we're going to try and get a little stronger and a little bigger, or we're going to do what a lot of coaches say, where we say, well, the weight room, it isn't the end-all be-all. And I'm of the opinion that by the time they get to high school, I don't really think that coaching is that important. I think that coaching is possibly the most overrated aspect of sports. Because Louis said something similar, and I don't want to justify my argument by citing Louis, but Louis said before that the best coaches in in any country or any system should coach the youngest athletes, because that's when they need to learn the skills. That's when they can learn the skills. So if, a kid gets to you and he's 14 or 15 and he's not already a great quarterback, you're not going to make him a great quarterback. He's probably going to have a weird throwing motion. He's probably going to have a ton of bad habits. Maybe you can make him a good quarterback, but that's it. You're not turning anyone at that point into something. The cake's kind of already baked. You're not gonna, if a kid's dropping passes as a freshman because he can't catch and has poor hand-eye coordination, I don't think you're gonna make huge strides between freshman and senior year. The biggest strides, the strides that everyone's going to see, are that seniors are generally bigger, stronger, and faster than freshmen. That, at our school, the school is up on top of the hill, and our training facilities are down the hill by the track. So, all these things I say to much gasps and scoffs. And I say it's true up the hill and it's true down the hill. The difference between most kids is simply that puberty makes them heavier, stronger, and because they get stronger naturally, that's why the older kids outrun the younger kids. Strength. There's not some magic that makes them suddenly quicker. The quickness is generally already there. The coordination is generally already there. Strength is the big thing that changes absent of training. And then likewise, from just sort of a money ball and economic standpoint, the thing that you can control, the thing that you can drastically increase is strength. So, I think to a large degree, it even gets to a point where you can practice more or you can lift more. I've seen kids who were seniors who showed up to practice every day and didn't appear to learn a damn thing. But if they show up in the weight room every day, that same kid is at least going to be noticeably stronger, noticeably bigger, which is going to make them noticeably better. So that's the basis of everything that I said. And I said, if under that idea and under that pretense, if strength training works and is potentially the most valuable thing to the development of athletes at any school, especially a public school where you can't recruit. If that's sort of the most predictable thing that you can do to improve the value of your player, we good? Okay. Then why do you not only not invest more time in it, but why don't you invest time and resources to try and get the most out of it? Because no football coach, for example, would ever tell you that running is running. They wouldn't say, I need my kids to be faster in the 40 and then send them to hit the cross-country trails. But a lot of coaches still have that idea that weightlifting is weightlifting. And I'm of the belief that it is not. I'm of the belief that everything matters, so why don't you try and stack as many small advantages as you can? So in essence, I posted all that and said, with decent training, I think that even a bottom feeder school like my alma mater could not only eventually become competitive, but could become potentially dominant. Because after all, the school that keeps kicking our ass, their streets cut through the same neighborhoods as our school. So if a kid grows up on one side of the street, and this is in the upper class white neighborhoods, the poor black neighborhoods, the neighborhoods in between, they have the same median incomes, they have the same enrollment. Why is it that a kid on one side is destined to go through 24 plus years of just getting his ass kicked, and the kid on the other side of the street, mom maybe working at the same office, dad playing in the same pickup league, and they all get to enjoy the spoils of success? That doesn't seem, rational to me. So I said all this, and then a few days later, an alumni hit me up and said, hey, I read your article, I watched Westside versus the World. I remember you were always, about this crazy weightlifting and stuff when we were in school. If I set up a meeting, would you take it with the coach? And I said, sure, what do you want? He says, well, I'd like for you to train him. And I said, cool, I've tried to do that before in the past, and I don't know if it was even the same coach, but they'd always turned it down. But yeah, that would be something really cool to put all this knowledge that I kind of learned through the movie into play with kids that it still actually mattered for, and just the point of sort of personal pride. And I had just moved back to Tallahassee and stuff, and this spring I just bought a house that's in that school's district, and though those district lines change all the time, I thought, I moved back to Tallahassee because I loved Tallahassee and loved where I was from. And sort of that same pride in where I came from, that same acknowledgement of everything that's come to shape me, wouldn't it be cool to put that back in to my old school? And I had the added benefit of, I get, right now at this point in my life, I have residual checks. I have some, consulting and business things that allow me to, collect enough money that I wouldn't have to charge the school to do it. I wouldn't have to charge any of the players. I could just, for the purity of it being my own hobby and my own obsession, I could train these kids and not have to turn any of them away for any reason. And we could see what happens if, the worst team in town starts doing this. And, either I'm wrong and I'm just going to waste a lot of time and annoy my fiance that I've spent so much time and money playing around with these kids. But hey, the team was already bad to begin with. Or I'm right, and maybe that means a couple kids can go to college who maybe wouldn't have otherwise. Some kids can just have some cool memories, and I can walk around my local Publix and still not be recognized, but wear my alma mater shirt and have someone say to me, good game. So that was last November, and finally I went through all of the weird screening and background checks that they make coaches go through these days to be able to get my little card that allows me on campus and through the gates that weren't there when I played, and all the security measures. I got to come on campus, and here's roughly what I found. At the time, I had just gotten a jump mat. I was really interested in some of the stuff I was seeing, particularly from Jared Bird and from Jared Bidney and from Bird. I was really fascinated by the running and jumping stuff, the 40 stuff. So I went out and got a jump mat. That was the first thing. And I ordered some lasers, but they wouldn't show up for a while. But the first thing I did was I tested my kids, and in the first month, I had 4 kids who jumped 30 inches on the whole team. Now, one of them jumped 37 inches. He was incredibly explosive, and he was going to a speed training place. And he refused to work out with the team, but he bet me that he could jump 40, and I bet him he couldn't. So we pulled out the jump mat in front of the whole team as they had all, because the first day, I don't know if anyone hit 30. It took a few days for someone to finally show up who could hit 30. We had a couple 32s and a 33. But this kid jumps 37, and by then the kid who was jumping 33 was already pushing 35. And he would go on to hit 36, and the kid who jumped 37 would go on to hit 40 a few weeks later. At first couple weeks, he only did the jump mat, and then after getting up to 38, he started coming in and squatting and doing our max effort work, because I ran basically a Westside template. 4 days, max effort upper, max effort lower, dynamic. And I was just sort of feeling out, trying to figure out what I could do with them. We had 6 squat racks, we had 6 bars. Our benches were just the adjustable benches that came with the squat racks, and the squat racks themselves were these Dynabody double-sided squat racks. We still use all this equipment. And from talking to Jared, I decided, of course, the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to have a box squat, and we didn't have any boxes. So I went out and I built out of just 2x4s and some 2x10s or whatever. I built these 6.5-inch platforms. And my idea was you could stack them on top of each other to make one box. And then I went out and bought garden kneelers. So I had to also make sure that all this stuff was of low enough expense that my girlfriend, who's now my fiance, wouldn't question me too much about the money. I'd already bought the jump mat, that was expensive. I'd already bought the lasers, those were expensive. So I didn't want to look like I was just throwing all this money into this program, because I would be the only person certainly doing that. And but I made these 13-inch, 2-stack boxes, and I put a little garden kneeler on it, which is just a foam pad, almost like a little yoga pad. They compressed just a little, so I figured by the time it compressed, it was down to about 13.5 to 14 inches, and I figured that would be similar to Jared's system of using a 12-inch hard box with the thick Elite FTS foam on top of it. I figured the stopping point would be close, and I would have saved a few $100s per rack. And what I found was a pretty weak team, in addition to not being able to jump. Of course, those things go hand in hand. If kids can't jump well, they don't have high relative strength, nor do they have very good rates of force development. So I started really tracking the jumps very early, and the kids loved the jumps. And moreover, the jumps were a great thing to for the coaches to see, because what the coaches had kind of told me coming in, the head coach was great. He said, I'm not a weight room guy. If you want to do that, great, you go do it. Like, it's all yours. The other coaches all kind of made comments of, well, lifting is lifting and strength is easy, and I'd hear the occasional, well, we don't want to get them too strong or muscle bound. And I said, don't worry. Yeah, don't worry. No one here is anywhere close to that. Y'all are losing 55-0 to people. Like, that ain't the problem here. But I appeared to do a lot of weird stuff. And of course, at first, our 6 racks or whatever, our 3 double racks, were in this tiny classroom that was in the back of this big tin building. And everything, I had to learn a lot about, I had to make a lot of decisions early on about, like, I couldn't train anyone the way that I wanted to. I had to make the best with what was there. I didn't have band pegs. I didn't have pulley systems or lat pull downs or anything like that. I didn't have, I wanted boards, so I went to Home Depot and I got more 2x4s and nails, and I made boards. We didn't have specialty bars. We don't have specialty bars. So I was in there running, conjugate as someone who, in my personal training, I'll go years without doing the same variation. I have a very wide, range of exercises, and I live on a belt squat and, reverse hypers and all this equipment that I didn't have. So the first week it was I built the boxes so that we could box squat. Then I built boards so that we could board press. Then I got creative and I started searching around, and I thought, well, we can't afford belt squats, but I want to have the kids march. So I brought belts from my dad's gym, and I got bands, and I'd loop the bands through the belt. Laura Phelps has a great video on how to do this, but this is something that I used to do going all the way back to like high school for me. Put the belts around the kid, loop the band from one foot up through the belt, down to the other foot, and we'd have them march in place for 1 or 2 minutes. And the kids, several times coaches and other people came in because you could just hear the kids howling when I would have them do belted marching. And they hated it. And, if a kid complained, I'd say, wait 1 second, I'll get something that'll make it better. And I'd come back and I'd hand them a 45-pound plate. And I'd shove it up next to them and say, keep marching. And, everyone's still on the clock. And they'd be holding the 45-pound plate. And I'd say, just hold that for a second. And I'd just walk and sit down. And they'd be stuck there going, like, how does this make it better? And I'd say, well, because you're not worried about the belt anymore. And they go, no, it hurts worse now. In a few weeks it won't, but the kids responded much quicker than ever, much quicker than the other coaches, much quicker than the parents. The kids didn't know I'd made Westside versus the World. The kids didn't know what Westside versus the World was. They didn't know I had a movie on Netflix at the time. The coaches, I told the head coach, he had never heard of Westside Barbell. Again, I don't think he had lifted a weight in 20 years. So he had played quarterback in the 90s, back when quarterbacks didn't have to, weren't in the weight room, even when he got to college. And he set all of his college's records and stuff. And said, yeah, quarterbacks, they went to the weight room, and quarterbacks went over here and, talked to girls. He said, that's never been my thing. So for some of the other coaches who had played in college and stuff, what I was doing looked weird. We were dragging a lot of sleds. And I was just trying to, come up with any kind of way to get more posterior chain work and stuff. And of course, we'd go back and we would jump. And I'd come and I'd tell the coaches, hey, the average jump increase this week was over 1 inch. And they'd say, what does that mean? I'd say, well, 1 inch a month is pretty good. After like a year, that'd be like 12 inches. I was like, what if your kids jump before? And they're like, well, we've never tested them before. And you go, well, if your kid jumps higher, he's getting faster. And though we're at a public high school and the track literally is, 5 feet outside of our gym doors, the track team uses the track. The wrestlers use the track. The field is always, once football comes off of it, it's girls soccer, then boys soccer, then lacrosse. Band has their practices, ROTC's out there. So though we have these facilities, if you drive by on the weekend, you'd say they have everything you could want. We didn't actually have that much. So the jump mat became another thing that was just economical and great under any weather condition. We could find, the 5 square feet that we needed to jump. And the kids didn't really look at it the same way that they looked at weightlifting. I wasn't putting a bar on their back while we were jumping. Again, we did box squat, and I tracked the box squat. I tracked all of my kids' numbers whenever they maxed. Then I tracked their jump numbers. Because Louie had always told me, if their box squat goes up and their jumps go up, then they got faster. And I found that holds true. When I bring out the lasers, sure enough, if a kid box squats 70 pounds more, he probably went up 4 to 5 inches on his vertical, depending on how heavy he was. And he might have gone down, 0.4 of a second on his 40, depending on how sort of out of shape he was to begin with. But so I started tracking everything, and this quite pathetic team that they told me, oh, well, this kid squats 500, and that kid squats 500, and this kid and that kid. And we did have these two big twin defensive tackles who, one of them benched 305, one benched 295. When I put them on the box, their 550-pound squats suddenly were 405 and 385. And those were tops on the team by a wide margin. So I don't know where they were squatting to or how they were doing these squats, or how much coach was reaching around and bear hugging them up. But these kids all got humbled very quickly. They all found out they couldn't jump, and they all found out they weren't that strong. And I said, this is great news, guys. Y'all are weak. And they'd say, why are you making fun of us? I say, no, if you're weak, it's easy to improve. If y'all were all strong, well-balanced athletes, I wouldn't know what to do. We'd have to do everything. But instead, this is going to be easy. We can just hammer a few things, and we'll get stronger. So those 4 kids who could jump 30 inches in February, the 37-incher, he jumped 40.1 by March. But then we got shut down in March because of COVID. He was a starting cornerback on pace to be a 3-year starter. He transferred to that school that had beaten us for 24 straight years. Sent me a message saying, hey, if I were younger, I think I'd stay. I like you. I think that, the training will be good. But I want to be on a winning team by last year. Our other starting corner, who had just won Player of the Year for the county the year before, again, a 3-year starter, his mom pulled him out. Thought he could get a better scholarship offer if he went to another school across town. So he was jumping 36. I just lost him. So I go back, and I had a young running back, freshman running back, who was jumping 26. By the time of our first shutdown, he was jumping 34. So I thought, all right, that's pretty good. Had another kid, he was jumping 22. By the end of the first shutdown, he was jumping 29. Again, I only had the kids last day of January, the first couple days of March. So 5 weeks. February is one of those nice 4-week entirely months. So it was enough that we could see progress, and it was enough that I started getting excited about, well, maybe next year will be better. Maybe we can do some things. And then what we were told was going to be like a 2-week shutdown turns into 3 months. Come back in late June, and we get to work out again for 5 weeks. By the end of June, I think I had 18 kids jumping 30, something like that. It's either 14 or 18. And the team vertical was, on average, had gone from like 24.5 to like 26.9. Or, 25.6. And then that was including all the seniors. That was including, all the seniors and then the freshmen who started working in with us. By the end of the summer, that had gone up quite a bit, and I got the kids back in September. Some of the kids did pretty well. Their numbers were still going up. Some of the kids had come back and they were 30 pounds heavier. We literally had a kid go from 220 pounds to 280 pounds through 2 shutdowns. Yeah, and what's worse is that kid was jumping 17 inches when he was 220. So he came back at 280 and was jumping 11 inches.
11 inches?
11 inches. Timed him in the 40, and he was running. That was the first time I had timed his 40, but he ran just under 6'5". And this was a kid that they told me specifically, like, we're going to have to lean on this kid a lot. He played both ways last year, and I was like, well, I don't know what he can do now. Started to figure out real quick that if a kid can't jump at least about 20 inches, which typically are going to be like your really young linemen, I find, who have that problem. The kids who they're linemen simply because they're just out of shape, not because they're strong, it's just they're large, and they're large because they have poor diet and activity habits. If those kids can't jump about 20 inches, they're not much use on the football field because they can't get out of their stance fast enough to transfer any of their size into anything. So everyone just runs by and around those kids. You can't pull them. They can't get up to a linebacker. They can't really do anything. Likewise, if a kid's running over a 6 at a high school level, those kids it's difficult to get them on the field. Even again, if they're offensive guards, unless the play is line up shoulder to shoulder with your tackle and center and all charge forward in unison, they get beat by simple, speed and by small kids. So immediately put kind of an extra emphasis on that, and we probably had 8 kids who couldn't jump 20. Now we're down to, I think, 2 kids who can't jump 20, or maybe 3, and one I think there's a sort of a disability underlying, because he can do a lot of other things, but the body doesn't mechanically work well, his joints don't like sequence to jump. But so anyways, those 4 kids that we had jumping 30 in February, none of them were freshmen. Currently, we've tested 41 kids who have jumped 30. So we went from 4 in the spring to 11 or 18 or something in the summer to now 41. And I've got, I think it's 8 kids over 29. So any of them, any day, we'll probably add 2 or 3 the next time we test. That team average that had gone from the high 24s to 25, with our returning players right now, so I've taken every day when we go into the weight room, I have my clipboard with me, and because kids are terrible at remembering their numbers, I use a Google Sheet, and I'll print out every day which things I'm expecting to maybe test. So I've got their 3 cone on this one, this is from the other day, their 3 cone, a blank column, so if they beat their score, I can write in a new one. Their shuttle, I can write in a new one. It ended up raining, so I had to put this back in my car, and I typed everything in on my phone on this day. But then I've got their 60-pound vertical, so this is their vertical holding 30s. And of course I got that from Jared. And then their unweighted vertical, and their unweighted, or in their regular broad jump. But so every day, right now I'm training them 5 days a week. One day is sort of a makeup day and a GPP day. Again, unlike everyone else before me here, I'm at a public school. So the plus side is the coaches, there's no static with the program because I am the program. So I get everyone, I get to see the kids. Some of the kids I get to see super consistently. There's no limitations on time, there's no conflict. The only conflicts are if they play another sport, or if, a lot of kids this semester, especially with hybrid learning and being on campus and off campus and Zoom and all the technology in play, a lot of kids have really bad grades. So we have a higher than normal number of, kids who text me saying, hey, Coach Fahey, I'm not allowed to come today because my progress report was non-satisfactory. To which I always try and give the parents support to say, fuck are you doing? Like, you got to get your grades right. This is unacceptable. They all seem to think that I'm much younger than I am. And just as you said, Blake, like they do that thing where they try and sort of brag to you the way that a young guy would at the gym to, say, hey, I just benched 225 and look at that dude's shitty form. And you go, there's no need to deride that dude, not, like at 225 isn't anything. But they'll come in and, oh man, this weekend was crazy. And as I was just explaining to y'all, like, I've never even drank before. So I'm really the wrong person to be telling this to. Like, Y'all mistake my youthful energy and passion for getting y'all stronger with me being, some different kind of person. Y'all got to keep your parents happy, and y'all got to stay eligible, and y'all got to stay more than eligible, because I want y'all to go somewhere after this. So a 2.0 ain't gonna cut it. 2.5 ain't gonna cut it. I need honor roll. But so my challenges are different in my situation. I don't get to get the nicest equipment, and if I get equipment, having one of something doesn't really matter, because I have days where over the summer we'd have run 2 sessions a day. Now the school had said that they had never had, and the coaches who had been there for 15 years, they had never seen more than 70 kids come on a day during the summer. We had one day where we had 104. So we'd have to split the kids up, and especially with COVID protocols, we were having to split the kids up into 3 different groups, cycling through different areas of the facility, with part of the weight room in here and then part of it over there to be technically 2 separate areas, and then doing stuff out on the field. And so I was having to structure their workout around this carousel for COVID. But if I don't have 6 of something, I kind of might as well not have any of it. Likewise, if I'm doing the jump mat, I only have 1 jump mat, at least for now, until I get a bonus or something that's enough to say, hey, do you mind me spending another $500-600 on a toy? I still need to buy like a car, and I got a mortgage and stuff. So it's hard to find excuses that don't seem particularly childish at this point. But so I have to figure out how to do everything non-optimally most of the time. I'm not able to train kids the way that I want to. I have to train them the best that I can. And for a lot of the questions and things that I get through Instagram especially, a lot of younger coaches contact me, a lot of guys who are, have this paralysis by analysis and this wanting to read it all and know it all so that they don't make any mistakes. And I can tell you, I've made plenty of mistakes while doing all of this. I've made mistakes in terms of layout. I've made mistakes in terms of sequencing. I've made mistakes in terms of volume. I've had times where the volume was too high. I've had times where the volume was too low. And to go back to the sort of pros of my situation, the biggest pro is that these kids are all going to the same school. They're all generally on the same schedule. They are all, clustered within this 3.5 to 4 year range. And for the most part, if I don't see a kid, I know why. I know which kids are going to wrestling. I know which kids are going to basketball. I know roughly what those kids are doing, and if we got 10 kids right now playing basketball, all 10, when they do make it to my workouts, generally perform in a similar manner. So it becomes really easy to sort of dial things in for them because I'm getting so many of them at the same time. So if I get 30 kids on a slow day, those 30 kids, they all went, they all had the same experience up the hill at the school. So if what I'm doing is working better, I'll see a flurry of improvements that stand out. I'll see a bunch of 2 and 3, inch jump PRs that day. And if what I'm doing doesn't work, then I'll see everyone's numbers kind of tank in unison. So that's been very informative, and our numbers improved more rapidly over the summer than they did in the spring. And our numbers improved more rapidly when we came back in the fall than they did in the summer. And they improved more rapidly at the end of the football season to now than they did before the football season, or even through the football season, because I would go in and even train a group of kids during the season in what they call their football class, which would be like weightlifting 1, 2, 3, 4, team sports 1, 2, 3, 4. So they've created all these class categories. I don't know how they do that in every state, but so to date, our team average currently, when you remove the seniors, is 27.917 inches. So the team average, removing the 17 and 18-year-olds, is 3 inches higher than it was with those seasoned, what would primarily be 17-year-olds in the spring, and replacing them with 14-year-olds on the roster. To go further, when you add in the seniors, and this kind of backs up the points that everyone before me made about, younger kids are more adaptable, they're more pliable. In my opinion, there's no time too early to start training a young kid. So long as it's not like some sort of torture for them that, is going to fracture a relationship with a parent or something. If you can get the kid to, somewhat agree, and you can, throttle yourself and pull back so that you're not, crossing any sort of line in the kid's training, do what you can do when they're young. I don't think there's any point that's too young, because when you add in our seniors, this number should go up, but when you add in our seniors, the average drops 0.2 of an inch. Just one class, we only had about 14 seniors. So the seniors jump average is somewhere down in the 26 range. The juniors jump average is 27.6. The sophomores jump average is 27.978. And our freshmen, on average, are jumping 28.017. So the really crazy thing is that the seniors, sophomores, and juniors all started training with me at the end of January. The freshmen, some of them started training with me in June. Some of them started training with me in September. Some of them didn't start training with me until late October. I had one kid who started training with me in late September. He was a track kid who saw me in one of these weightlifting classes, jumping the kids on the mat. He said, "What do I have to do to jump on the mat?" I said, "You have to join football. I'm here to coach football. So you join the football team, and if you make it through practice, I'll train you during this period." Well, he was a track kid. He'd done AAU track, and his AAU track coach said, "He's pretty fast, but we got another kid who's way faster, who just beats him off the line every time." I had timed this other kid. This other kid I'd started working with in the summer, he jumped to 29 when I started with him. So he already was a pretty good athlete. He jumped to 33 by the end of the summer. And then he wasn't in this class, and he wasn't coming to any of the other optional things. So I hadn't seen him in about a month and a half, but he was a running back. He was the starting running back on our JV. And first game, he hit the sideline and, just burned everyone up the sideline. He was the fastest kid on the JV team. Took like his second or third carry, 67 yards to the house. Fast kid. And jumping 33, and at the time that was the freshman record, and I thought like, wow, this kid's pretty good. In September, I had my first, after losing that one 40-inch kid, another kid who had started at 32.5, hit 40.5, and a senior who had started at 32.5, hit 40.7. The senior had started in June. The junior had started when he was a sophomore in February. So I put 8 and 8.2 inches on these kids' jumps. Both very fast, very explosive kids. One ran a 4.44, electrically timed on laser, and the other was a 4.6 guy on laser. But so I had this freshman who starts with me in September, and his coaches are telling me he's pretty good, he's got good top end speed, but he's slow off the line. He's about a 4.8 kid. And that was hand time, they thought. And I said, okay, well, that makes sense. He's slower than this other kid that I've timed on laser at 4.77. And you're telling me that kid consistently beats him, and that you hand timed both. 4.77 kid was a 4.6, and that this kid was a 4.8. So he starts training with me. He jumps 31 the first day. I think, wow, that's pretty good. That put him in, he was the second best freshman at the time. And that's in late September. In early November, I take him out to hit the track. He had jumped at that point a 35. Take him out onto the track. And I ask him, do you have your spikes? He says, yeah. I said, I want to see what you run a 40 in. You've gone up 4 inches. So we take him out, and he runs a 4.7 on his first one, and he's all excited. That's a good number for him. And then the second one, he runs a 4.513. So now his track coach had just told me he's not that fast. I mean, he's fast for a freshman, but he's not excitingly fast. And now he's run a 4.5 on laser. So he's 0.3 of a second faster than his hand time. So then the next week, he jumps 36 inches. Now his box squat over the same time period had gone from 135, an ugly, grindy 135, to 275. And he's a very light kid. He had just turned 14, like a couple days before I started working with him. So last week, we take him out, and I posted a video of this on in my story, and it's posted over on our Instagram for the team at Leon Strength. He comes out, and I told this one alum, hey, we got this freshman. I don't know if he can catch. I don't know if he can do anything with a football in his hands or with football pads on. But the kid is fast. By then, he was jumping 37. Well, he jumps 38.5, and then the next a couple days later, take him out, and we run 40s. He comes out the gate, runs a 4.45. The team best had been 4.444. So he's 100th of a second behind the team best. He says, let me run it again. 4.39. Says, let me run it again. He takes his tennis shoes off, and he puts on his spikes. 4.309. The kid is 14 and 2 months old. And he'd gone from a 31 to a 38.5. But then that other kid, who I had timed at the 4.77, he ran a 4.605. And his vertical went from 33 at the beginning of the semester up to 37.7. And his box squat in the summer started at 135 and is now like 345. So he got a lot stronger, but he's also a lot shorter. So the kid who runs the 4.3, he's taller, that strength with those longer levers. He also runs a 1.37810. And he has beautiful form, but a little bit of strength added to, and this is a track kid. He'd never run. His coach at first told him, don't come train with me. And then so every time I posted a video of him, I'd tag the track team. But I tagged the track coach, and eventually said, well, good job. So now he's allowed to train with me. 4.3s will do that. But so all that is like the idea that the earlier you start these kids, the faster they can make progress, and you don't have to be perfect. And then the problems that I deal with in having so many kids is that it's made me have to simplify what I do a lot. So say on a Monday, now I like to jump the kids after they've done something like squat. It typically makes their jumps better. Likewise, and I heard that kid from Stanford at Jared's gym say, when they jumped first, it would make their squats better. Mm-hmm. So kind of one warms up the other. Mm-hmm. But so what we'll do a lot of times, because I'm fighting to just get the kids on sort of an organized system and sort of wash out a lot of what I think is like just loser culture and stuff from the previous years, and years when they would come down and maybe they do 3 sets of 5 on bench, squat, and power clean, and that was their workout. And so getting the kids to understand, like, we're going to do a whole lot more. You're going to get results. We've had kids go from squatting 265 to 510 from spring to now. had another kid go from 275 to 505. Had another kid go from 275 to 480. So they're getting big jumps, and again, they all buy into it. They all like the variation. They all like that they get to jump and they get to run on lasers. You know, the jump mat and the lasers really just gamifying everything. And even if I don't know what I'm doing at all, they can figure things out just in trying to, you know, every jump for them is an experiment to try and see if I try a little harder, or if I try going down faster, or if I try coming up at a certain point, or maybe if I throw my arms down, or, you know, maybe if I hit that balance point just a little different, can I drive that number up 0.1? So for me, that makes it, you know, pretty easy, because that part, at least, that's on the kids getting better. I'm providing some direction, and then it's helping them to tune in and to learn what it is that they want to do. So just as everyone has said before me, it's that feedback is helping them develop intent. When we jump, all of our jumps are singles. We start off with dumbbell jumps. Usually we'll start off, we'll either start off with dumbbell jumps, or if I'm trying to time 20s or 40s or flying 10s, I'll do 40s about once a month, kind of that Jared model. But then, like Bird and a lot of other people, I will rotate 10s and flying 10s, or 10s with 90-pound sleds behind them. I'll try and have them running probably 2 to 3 times per week. Not very high volume. You know, again, if I have 30 or 40 kids, I might set up 2 lanes with the lasers. I got 2 display units in front of me for their scores. I'm saying set and go, and getting them to run, and, you know, we're just trying to beat our times. They might run 3 10s, they might run 4 10s, they might run 2 to 3 flying 10s. We're only doing one of these running variations per time, but the, you know, sort of total volume of yards ran is always going to be, you know, under 120. But so we're just taking it out like, you know, drivers trying to hit a course record in their car and then get it right back into the mechanic. So we'll do that. It's also great because as the kids are all leaving, I've got the lasers set up so that everyone can see them out on the turf before soccer comes in and kicks us off, or out on the track. So I'm trying to use it too as a recruitment tool to get more of these kids to come down, because frankly, when you're at a school that loses a lot, like, you see a lot of kids that you would like to, you know, maybe be on the team, and they're just walking by, you know, I don't want to lose. I'm not gonna, you know, I'll try baseball or something. We got a good baseball team. We got a good soccer team. So the soccer team has, you know, more kids than the football team. But so I put all that out, and it helps to get them to come down and to hurry up to get down the hill, and helps to bring out some new kids. So we get our few runs, tell them take off the cleats, take off the spikes, whatever. We go inside, we get on the jump mat. Every single day they're on the jump mat. So if they come 5 days a week, which I'm there at least 5, or I'm there 5, sometimes more, 5 days a week, we do their main workouts Monday through Thursday. I would like to do it, you know, with Wednesday kind of being like a back and just GPP day to space out the max effort and dynamic effort. But again, it's that idea of I've doubled some kids' squats. So it's not like, you know, it doesn't work. And again, these kids are younger, so the recovery rates are much better. So, you know, for me, I want my at least 72 hours between major workouts. But for them, yeah. For them, though, they still make progress, and especially the younger kids. For some of the younger kids, that means that if they do max effort lower on Monday, they do their, you know, speed squats on Wednesday, and then suddenly they got a third day on Friday that if they actually come, and we got, you know, right now probably 15 to 20 kids who come on our Fridays. So I'll give them like, you know, 3 cone drill or shuttle, or maybe we'll do power ball toss. We'll do something kind of like combine oriented. So I'll tell them, you know, like, hey, today is the day where I'm going to make sure that when you go do a combine, you look like a pro. And they like that because it, you know, lets them know that, again, like, we're thinking about their future. We don't necessarily, if they run a faster cone drill, it doesn't help us on the field. But, it might help him get recruited. It might help him get noticed. Unlike me, when I went to, first time every time I've ever run a cone drill was at a combine. And I would see kids that I was a way better athlete than who would, I'd be falling and slipping all over the place. And no one ever told me, like, hey, just don't, go 3/4 speed and you'll run a better time. This whole thing's a joke. But we do something like that gets them down and out. Then we do our jumps. And then, until mom comes to pick them up, I'm giving them extra back work, extra tricep work, extra, small exercises, or, extra belted marching. For our belt squats and our marching now, because we were popping bands and, the shoes were eventually sawing through the bands and stuff, we've moved to a loading pin. Titan sells them for $21 or $24 or something. A loading pin. Those 2 boxes that I had said would become our 13-inch box. Boom, boom. They're 6.5-inch platforms for everyone to stand on. They march on top of those with the loading pin, and then a toe strap. Toe strap is the same kind of material you would find in spud straps. It's the same yellow too, but it's like $8 for a 5 foot long by 2-inch wide toe strap.
Do you have that on your Instagram somewhere?
Let's
see what that looks like.
I've posted my story before.
Oh.
I can show you what it is.
Yeah.
But if you just look up toe straps, the hard thing is finding them in about 5 feet of length. Because if they're 4 feet, then they're they're too small. If they're 6 feet, they're really long. 5 feet is a good length that, the big boys can use them and the little skill players can use them. And them still be short enough that the weights come up off the ground. We use 45-pound plates for that, forces their feet out wide. I like to get a lot of wide stance stuff because whenever you make a cut, it's going to be wide. You're having to build up those hips, get those feet out there. You were asking about agility work. That's kind of my, Coach Day talked about all the unilateral work. For me, unilateral work, sled dragging is unilateral. No one ever talks about that. But that's
I asked him about it. He said the reason why, because in his college, it's a hard floor like this, and so he said he would do sled if he had this.
Well, then sled dragging, belt squat marching, again, all unilateral. And then when I want to build up real strength in your legs, if we're not using small exercise, then we're squatting. That's pretty easy. Our squat variations are, we squat to basically the 14-inch box, a 17-inch box, what I call our high box, which is, if somebody has a recruiting profile or something, that's the box we're putting in. When I talk about the kids' squats and stuff, that's the box I'm talking about, 17 inches. So if you're my height, and you're depending on the shoes you're wearing, that might be the correct height. If you're shorter than me, that's probably a little above parallel, but it doesn't really matter. Kids are making gains off of it. And again, they don't really compress. So versus being at a 12-inch box that starts at 18 and then compresses down, it's not really that much different. But I do have some plans to fix up our boxes because I want the optimal box height. If Jared and Bird and other people like that have figured out a better box height and a better box system, then that's what I want, rather than tinkering around with mine. I want to make as few trips to Home Depot as possible. But so they'll run. Our average, say, lower body day would be some sort of run or, timed thing. Again, with 20 or so kids, if they're only going through, sometimes only twice on whatever it is, working with limited reps because of time, because of logistics. The lasers are great, the jump mat is great because, it gamifies it. And if kid's running on laser and the whole team's going to see what he ran, kid's going to give you good effort. The kid's going to try and beat his team. The kid who ran a who ran a 6.2, who maybe was running a 6.2 and wasn't really trying, in part because he knew he was going to run something slow. So, and if you're slow, you got a lot of time to think while you're running. So he knows like a bad number's coming. Yeah, hey, I've been slow before. So not that slow, but like I ran track. They put me in the 100. I watched everyone just leave me, and had enough time that running like a 12-second 100, and everyone else is hitting 11. And you look up in the stands, you have enough time to see facial expressions, and you just feel alone. So it's like, I understand that. But so if you're, that 6 flat kid, if it's just coach down there holding the stopwatch, yeah, it's easy to kind of just get discouraged halfway through and kind of ease up early. But when there's a big radio display, and lights and LED of, that time coming up, feels a lot better when it starts with 5 than when it starts with 6. So you get that same kid to, bust out a 0.2 second, improvement, because he's just trying to stop getting embarrassed. Mm-hmm. And eventually, he's got a respectable time. He's not embarrassed at all. He starts to get excited about, like, did this with a kid in the spring who'd never broken 6 before, and in 2 months we got him down to a 5.6. And he thought the lasers were broken. And then he ran a 5.5 the next month. And he's probably going to be playing college because he's a 6'5.5" offensive tackle. But again, at that 6.0, he'd be way too slow to really do anything. So if you're semi-athletic, a lot more doors are open than if you're just flat out too slow to come out of the stance. But so yeah, another thing is like, when I'm comparing my numbers, I've had so far 41 kids over 30, 3 over 40, 8 over 36. I haven't had the kids for a really long time so far, and I get them in these chunks, and I'm hoping, I'm very optimistic that this next year, things will be figured out, and maybe in a year's time, no one will be in lockdowns, and things will be somewhat normal, and there will be movies in theaters, and that'll help out other parts of my life. But I'm really excited that I'm going to have these kids for some of them for 3 more years, hopefully, unless I piss off some parent or coach gets fired and the next one thinks I'm weird or whatever the deal is. Yeah. Kids might mutiny. I don't know. But, when as much as I'm chasing guys like Jared and Bird, everyone, and as competitive as I am, I want my numbers to look like theirs. But while I'm at a public school, I'm also cognizant of the fact that, like, they get kids who either want to be there or who their parents want to be there. There's some sort of support. There's almost a self-selection process. I get the kids who wanted something and couldn't afford anything. Those kids are great. Although a lot of times it's hard to sort of keep them motivated. There's sort of an urgency and a desperation there that sometimes creates like too much negative energy. And then I get the kids who are hardworking and just, like if coach, we're supposed to be here because we're supposed to be here. And if coach says do something, I do it until, I bleed from the eyeballs. Like I just give effort 100% of the time. And then I get kids who are resentful of the fact that coach is telling them they need to be somewhere, even though all of my workouts are voluntary because it's a public school. And, our athletic director wants to make sure we're compliant with everything and stuff. So the kids are there because they want to be there on some level, but sometimes they don't want to be there to train. They want to be there because their friends are there and because they don't have anything to do for the next couple hours. So that's always a struggle of, keeping that many kids focused. Other coaches on staff try and help me out sometimes. It's difficult because they all come from backgrounds where, if I put a kid on the jump mat and he's only going to do 3 dumbbell jumps that day, that's our warm-up for our regular jumps. And as I put on our thing, we track those dumbbell jumps. So when I'm running it, I find the kid's name, I find what his best is, and if his best is 26.1, I'm saying, all right, come on, man, 27. Let's see 27 today. Let's go. Let's hit the ground running. 27. And maybe he jumps to 25, whatever. But that's close enough. That maybe the next one will be 25.5, and the next one maybe it'll be 26.5, and boom, he's got a 0.4 of an inch PR. Cool, now we move on. The other coaches have that thing in them of they like to see kids just at work and moving and sweating, and that's what training is to them. Is training is boot camp. Training is militaristic, and so I'll put I've kind of rotated through the coaches trying to figure out like who can I put on the jump mats and get, I want to see my sheet come back with a lot of pencil on it because these kids have been hitting improvements. And I ran the kids through the other day, and I had one kid hit an improvement out of like 35. I said, that can't be right. I'm going to log the numbers towards the end, and I still got 10 or 12 kids around. And so I called the kids back, and I said, all right, you guys, back on the mat. And 6 of them hit PRs. But they'd all done it with the coach before. So again, I think everyone's kind of mentioned it before, and I'm talking just sort of aimlessly in every direction. But like that idea of, kind of deprogramming a lot of the football culture of like, we just want to see hard work, and we want you to prove how tough you are at every turn. It's like, like that got you that 55-0. Like drubbing, like that, the 55-0 team did that, and the team that got beat 55-0 did that. So that doesn't help anyone. It's immaterial to anything. So I think for a lot of coaches, pulling that back and deprogramming that from themselves, and being really cognizant of that idea that you're trying to get, and Jared said it before. The T is teaching and training. You're trying to get that kid to learn how to display that much more force. Because if he can do it once, then maybe he can do it twice. And as a famous movie said, if you do it twice, it ain't an accident. It's my movie. I haven't watched it in a year, but I know that much.
See, I know more than him now because I watched it like 10 times. So.
Yeah, I try and forget it so that my goal is to like hear it one day in the background somewhere and turn my head around and need a few seconds to realize, oh shit, they're watching my thing. But yeah, there's a lot of that deprogramming, and so I have coaches who are there, and for the most part, they all try and be very helpful. They don't fight me at all on anything. They understand that like they can see that there's more plates on the bars. They didn't used to run out of plates when they would squat before. They were like, we're seriously running out of 45s, and the team is still not, by my standards, like a strong team. Like I don't want to tell you all their numbers because they're generally not that good, but they're so much better than they were. That they're squatting, 70 pounds more on average, and it's still not, they go, oh, my team squats 309 on average. Like, then I go to Jared's and I see, little girls doing that. Like it.
So he gets them to what, 7, 8?
Yeah, but so I guess what I was going back to was, so to put it all in perspective, and again, using that, I love using the vertical as a metric because it tells you the relative strength and the rate of force development. And that's the basics of, I know it's not the end all be all, but damn, that's a lot of just what makes up a good athlete. How strong are they pound for pound, and how quickly do they display force? And the jump mat tells me both of those in an instant. And then as I watch it, I can tell which kids move athletically and which kids don't. But so as I've got all these kids now, and like I said, 8 over 36 inches, if they go over 36 inches, I give them a shirt. It says Flight Club, we're the lion, so that's a lion with wings. It says established at 36 inches. So I do all these little things to further kind of gamify things, and I give them Madden ratings. I found somebody on Reddit who did an analysis to, they created a trend line of like what does the Madden rating on average mean in terms of a player's corresponding combine measurements from the NFL Combine. And so they put in thousands of players and found this like average trend line for all these different attributes. So like we got our best jumper is, returning on the team, 40.5 inch vertical, is a 94 jump rating. If I can see him on here. His name's Bigham. Where's Bigham? I don't know. I'm trying to see what the kid who runs the 4.3. Okay, here we go. A 96 speed rating. A 99 would be a 4.22. So I want to get someone to a 99. And then I make little graphics and stuff for their Instagram. The kids all like that. And again, I'll post the a rating of just all of their Madden ratings averaged together to give them sort of, I call it a lion rating because we're the Lions. So it gives them kind of a ranking and metric for the whole team. But I've also caught like our coaches looking at it. And then another thing that I think has helped some of the coaches to realize, maybe a kid who wasn't that great last year, but he's put 8 inches on his vertical. It's a brand new kid now. Mm-hmm. He's several tenths of a second faster. He's way stronger. He's just way more athletic. And that kid's way more confident now. So all of that data, even in ways that I didn't anticipate like that, one of those kids said to me, it wasn't until you got here and started testing us that the coaches realized I was a good athlete. And he jumps 40.5 inches. Like said he felt like no one realized that. And I was like, well, you only jumped 32. So maybe, you were good, but you weren't that much. In the spring, we had 0 freshmen who could jump 30. Now we've got freshmen at 38.5, 37.7, 35.3, 34.1, 31.6, 31.9, 30.4, 30.9. Like we got just a ton of them. Like 30 inches used to be a big number for them. It's not anymore. Kids are embarrassed if they jump under 30. But again, to put that into a bigger perspective, Rivals got to run combines early this year. They tested 7,005 kids. Out of that, what percentage of kids, Blake, do you think jump 30 inches on a national basis?
You said percentage?
Yeah. Of kids who go to combines.
Right.
So again, talking about self-selecting groups here. These are kids who are actively seeking to go play college football.
I'm expecting to be surprised. So I'll say 50%.
No.
25. 10%.
No.
3%.
You said 3%, and you said that's too small. The answer is 4.27%. 4.27% of kids going to football combines.
Yeah, you give them credit.
That's nationwide, 4.27%. So when I got to my school, I believe our number was 3.8%. Today, our number is 41. 41 out of 105 total kids tested, so about 40%. So almost 10 times the national average. To go from below to 10 times above in just 6 or 7 months. And again, like this is the first time I've coached athletes, at least with a heavy emphasis on speed and agility. I've had a 14-year-old run a 4.3. Our best 3 cone is a 6.7 something, which isn't amazing, but we've only done that a few times. Our best power ball is a 43 even by a kid who started at 27. Power Powerball is a weird thing. The kids like it. It's fun to do. For me, I can tell, you can tell which kids have really tight hips, and for blocking and for football, it's pretty informative. It's the same way that you want them to block. And I realize that especially with our young linemen, the same problems that they have in this drill, they have in out on the field. That basically they don't ever get their hips through. They just kind of try and press everything. But at the opening, Jared talked about the opening, which is an invite only. It's supposed to be more elite than rivals. Their average 30 at the opening, at their showcase event or whatever, which I think is 100 kids, their average is 30 inches. And those kids are all 3, 4, 5 stars. Those are highly rated kids. So their average is, not really that far ahead of our team average. And we won 1 game last year. So this is a bad team. We tripled the percentage we went from 6% of our kids running a sub 4.8 laser 40 to 18%. And we have a bunch of kids who are between 4.8 and 4.9 right now. Oh yeah, for the Powerball, because I brought up the opening, their average throw is 27 feet 4 inches. Our average team throw is like 34 something. And again, there's a lot of technique that goes into that, but if our kids go to a combine that uses that, and a lot of combines are replacing the bench press with that, our kids are going to look good. And again, a lot of these drills we don't hit regularly. It'll be months or at least weeks in between. So they're making consistent progress in everything. In terms of like assistance work we like to use, I use a lot of Nordic curls using bands to sort of unweight them. We'll set up the spotter's arms on the rack really high and set the bands up on that because we don't have a Nordic bench. We don't have a lot of equipment. So we'll use mini bands. We've gotten a couple of the kids who can maybe do like 4 or 5 without the bands now. But we'll like hammer those, or we'll hammer a 45-degree hyper. Trying to hammer glutes and hammer hamstrings. We do a lot of banded curls for really high reps, to keep the knees healthy. We do a lot of heavy tricep work, a lot of dumbbell work. We use a lot of board presses in our rotation. I like to use really high boards, like 4 and 3 boards with the kids, specifically because they're simply not used to handling any weight, so trying to really override them into getting under something heavy. It's a thing that Dave Hoff did with me, where I instantly my bench shot up 30, 40 pounds in a matter of weeks, because basically he just called me a bitch and said that I was being a pussy when it came to the weight. He said, you should be handling 500 pounds. And I was just excited that I just hit 400 pounds. He said, go do 4 board. I said, do what with it? He said, go do 500 pounds to a 4 board. And he just said it like it was, go pick it up from the store. And I never held more than 455 pounds in my hand before. But sure enough, I listened to him and I did the progression he said to get up to 500, and I did 495 for 5. And then I stopped, and he said, why'd you stop? I said, because I was just freaked out that I was moving so much weight with ease. He said, cool, drop a board next week and beat it. So bigger range of motion, but do it with more weight. He said, how does that work? I said, just trust it works. So I did 545 the next week to a 3 board. About 6 weeks earlier, I'd hit 425 to a 3 board. But it was simply being exposed to like that much more weight made me realize that I was just sort of, I'm a relatively seasoned lifter. I had a 425 bench press, and I was just sort of like, feeling that resistance, and I was realizing like I was getting psyched out and quitting on the weight. But so I did the same things with my kids. Took them to a 4 board with the goal being like, let's just hit something bigger than let's touch or hold something more than you've ever touched or held. And they, I had on one cycle, I had 2 kids who each had benched 275 and had never held. They'd both missed 280. Put them on a 4 board. They both missed 285. Back-to-back days. I was only training one of them at the time. This was over quarantine, so only one of them was in their training at a time. And on back-to-back days, they each missed 285. When 275 got it with ease, looked like a speed rep, missed 285. Came back, missed 285. Came back, missed 285. I told them about Dave Hoff putting, 110 pounds on my 3 board overnight. And then after that, I did 515 to a 2 and 475 to a 1 and 425 into foam with a pause, which normally I'd be 30 pounds better, just touch and go to my chest. Never came back to do the touch and go to my chest, but should have been good for anywhere from 445 to 465. And just got distracted and had other things pop up. But I told them about this. I said, like, this is, and they had seen me board press. They had seen me sling 500 around. And 10 minutes later, they both get back, get 480 or get 285 after missing it 2 and 3 times. 290, 295, 300, 305, 310, 315. And then finally, one of them missed 320 and the other one got 320. All mental. It's all, again, that idea of they were hitting resistance and simply giving up and didn't understand that they had like another gear that they could get to. So when we're jumping, we're just trying to get to that next gear. When we're maxing on anything, like any of these, I've had 1 kid go up 11 inches, 3 kids go up 9, 8 kids go up 8 inches, 11 kids go up 7, 23 go up 6 or more, 29 go up 5 or more, 43 go up 4 or more. I'm not really doing that much. Most of it is these kids are all capable of doing this. The same way that like Jared's results or Bird's results or anyone's results, they live in these small communities. They have these small talent pools. None of us are really doing that much. We're just largely, a big part of the conjugate system is it's training the nervous system. That's what takes, weightlifting is weightlifting into like, this is a secret weapon. I call it cheat codes. This is relatively easy to replicate if you're just not cynical enough to discount it. And if you do, and you do it early enough especially, like the gains are unreal. Yeah.
I got a question. All day everybody's been talking about like the youngest athletes and stuff like that, right? And you said how your seniors' numbers were a lot lower than each year younger it got better. So is there anything that you do with the older guys to kind of make up for that, or is it just at their own progress?
So like our best senior went from a 32.5 to a 40.7. I couldn't like, but that's still good, number one. And I couldn't pull out another trick that would like magically work for a 17-year-old and not work for a 16-year-old. So it's just that like, that's the other thing is our JV team like beat the crap out of everyone they played this year. And in part, meanwhile, our varsity team was getting slaughtered by everyone. And the same, some of these kids were on JV last year and the JV team wasn't that good. It's not like we just have some special, we didn't have any special system. We're running the same basic system as the varsity. Everything is the same. The only difference is our freshmen were starting here, their freshmen were starting here. I got our freshmen for a few months. Their freshmen, made a little progress. Our freshmen made a ton of progress. Our best freshman went up 9.3 inches. You're talking in like a 2-month span. From 26 to 35.3. The other kid that I talked about going from a 4.8 to a 4.3 on laser in less than a semester. Like, if I could give those type of gains to the older kids predictably, I would. The same way if I could give those kids to NBA players predictably, I would. But if it worked for the older players at that rate, that would just mean that it would work for the younger players at an even faster rate.
Yeah, okay.
So over time, what's going to happen is, our freshmen are jumping 28s on average. Well, they're not going to go down to 27 next year. They're probably going to be jumping 33s on average next year. And they're just going to keep going up because our seniors went way up. Our average senior went up over 4 inches. Problem is that our average freshmen were going up well more than that, and that the distance between our average freshman and our average senior in terms of starting point. Now they swear to me still that these seniors and these juniors and stuff were doing some sort of training before I got there. But again, training is not training. Like, it's not all the same. Little differences. The little difference in, doing the box squat versus the free squat. Doing more posterior chain work. All those little differences. Everyone else, again, if you're only working with a couple dozen kids and they're over a big range, it might be, and one goes to this school, another goes to this school, and they come from all these different backgrounds. It might be really hard to see what's working and what's not. Now, these kids are at the same school, same sports, same side of town, everything's as close as you can get to like a controlled study. But the younger kids are more adaptable. And again, it's our seniors jump lower than our juniors jump lower than our sophomores jump lower than our freshmen. Our seniors started at a higher point than our juniors did. Our juniors started at a higher point than our sophomores did. Our sophomores started at a higher point than our freshmen did. But the real thing is that, if you're not training for these kind of attributes, then the progression that your body naturally makes at that point is pretty low. Because you got to think, the basis of that idea that younger people progress faster, you have to understand that, human beings, we're weird as a species. We have developed this culture that has outpaced our own biology. So, you are basically the same as modern man pre-electricity, pre-internet, pre-printed press, recorded language. A caveman and you are basically the same. So if you take away sort of everything that we've built up around our own ideas of what we are as people and humans and stuff, you strip all that away and you just look at us as an animal species. Most animal species need to make all their adaptations very early in life. We are an animal species that comes out of the womb not very adapted, and then has the ability to adapt in any number of ranges. And you look at where do we exist on Earth? Everywhere. Now that's because of our intellect and our ability to transport ourselves and whatnot, but human beings existed over a wide, they're in Australia, they're in the North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, they were everywhere for a long, long time. So if you don't have all the modern conveniences of society, when do you make the most adaptations? Very early in life, your first few years. And every year you're going through, the seasonal cycles. And every year, your body thinks like, okay, these 2 feet can only really carry us over so much range. So wherever you're at, what's the biggest change? It's going to be environmental. What kind of environment do we live in? What are the threats in that environment? What's the weather like? What activities do we need to be prepared for? So your body can go in like any direction, but it's not going to carry all of those attributes without stimulation. So every year your body's going like, okay, we made it through this year and we needed this. We made it through, so we need to keep developing in this path because we probably are going to exist, like our biology doesn't account for the fact that we might hop on a plane and move somewhere else, or that we might change careers. So your biology is accounting for like, what do you need to do to get food? What do you need to do to find shelter? What do you need to do to withstand the elements? So it's thinking on a path of like, after a few years, it's going to start winnowing down which kind of attributes does it need to develop and which does it not. So, at 20 years old, how much learning does your body think that it needs to make? It's been through 20 cycles, 20 winters, 20 droughts, 20 floods, 20 times where whatever you ate, like, dried up in the ground or migrated to another plane. So, like, the younger you are, the more adaptive you are. And the older you are, the more extreme that stimulus needs to be to drive out some adaptation. Andy Galpin phrased this really well one time, and I usually remember it, but I can't. I think it was something to the point of, and Louis said something similar, like you could make any kind of adaptation if you could withstand it. If you could survive the stimulus necessary to make any adaptation, you could.
It's like when they make a superhero or something. They
Yeah.
almost have to kill you.
Yeah.
If you survive, they're your Wolverine, but if you don't, you die.
Yeah, it's the mythology of a superhero. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I could rant about conditioning
I had
or
one,
burning ladders or.
The kid that jumped, the big kid that you said was only jumping 11, and you were saying that there was something about if a kid can't jump under 20 at that size. I can't. What did you say about it?
Oh, if they're not.
They're no use to the team. You're saying.
Yeah, because
they can't run.
Yeah, so we were running into this problem with several of our linemen. They look like linemen. They have some of the attributes of a lineman, but they're just so slow that if you put them in the game, if you could pick and choose where the defense was going to line up, they were great.
Yeah.
But if they got, you were limited to what they could run and be effective at all because they were simply too heavy with too low of relative strength to make just the initial steps necessary. I mean, you think about I don't know, what's your vertical?
30.
30? Yeah. Think if you could only jump 11. Think about how slow you're moving your body.
Yeah.
So that's, you can't, and I was saying earlier, you can't play with leverage and play low if you can't create the speed necessary to achieve the angles that you need to be at to play low.
I was gonna ask, do you know if anybody's done, or if you just come across? Because in my head, what is the injury rate on that kid? Because he has to be at such a, you have to. I mean, to play football your whole life, and then you're 300 pounds, you jump 11. I mean, that's beyond athletic. What do you do? You got to be 50 pounds. I can't imagine it. You got to be overweight by a lot.
Oh yeah,
I know the training is bad.
He's way overweight.
He has to.
He's
So I'm
way
just
overweight.
thinking, what's the injury? I wonder if anybody looks at a correlation between injury rates and that.
Well, you gotta kind of look at you got to look at the demands of football, because I have thought about things like that. If you're a slow running back, like, you're going to get injured because
Yeah.
everyone's trying to hit you.
Yeah.
If you're a slow offensive lineman,
Right.
like, you can go your whole life being a slow offensive lineman and, not stub a toe because everyone's just running by you. No one's
Right,
trying to
right.
hit you. Everyone's trying to
Right.
avoid you, and you're just
Right.
making their job really
Right.
easy.
Right. Because you said the little guys would just run around him.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I was thinking more like maybe like the soft tissue injuries of them just running with that much weight, but being that weak because they
Yeah,
got super weak and they're that slow.
With that player in particular, he has had he had a shoulder injury, and it was just from trying to reach out to grab someone running by. Like, it was. We've had a couple kids who've had that. I think we had another offensive lineman who I think just had surgery on his shoulder for that.
How much were these kids that I'm guessing can't squat a lot? How much were they benching out a lot either?
No.
Yeah.
They're just generally what I found was that the linemen were I played offensive line at 243 pounds, but I could jump over 30. I could run a sub 4.9 40. I was a big missile when I played. And I played with kids who were like 220, 230 pounds, who they weren't fast, but they weren't slow. They might run a 5.2, 5.3, which for a high school offensive line, like, that's not bad. That's usable. You can run your plays with that. But those kids were, maybe they benched 250. And I was benching 370, so I didn't think that they were anything special. But I played on a team where 5 kids benched 350 or more. And then I came to a team where 1 kid benched 300. And then that kid transferred. Oh, that was the thing. So we had our 2 starting cornerbacks who jumped my first 36 and 40. They transferred out. And then our 2 starting defensive tackles who benched 295 and 305. And the 305 kid, I got to 385 in like 6 or 7 weeks. And then they transferred. So we lost 4, would-be senior starters. Between them, the 2 twins, they had started since week 1 their freshman year. So you lose 4-year starters. You lose 3-year starters in the middle of COVID. So, like, you've been doing Zoom meetings about, your defense and stuff, and suddenly you just 4 starters down, and they're like, your team captains are gone. And yeah, what you're left with is, well, the kid who was their backup is also the starter on offensive line, and now you're saying, you need to start both ways. It's not going to go very well. That kid gets exhausted, and with every play, he's getting worse at both positions. So your whole team's getting worse at both positions every single play. And that's how you don't have a very good football team.
Anybody else got any questions? I didn't see any in the chat. No?
All right,
Anything left to say?
just burn the ladders.
Burn the ladders.
Burn the
Surprised
ladders.
you didn't bring any of the shirts.